No, you ruined the joke.
What?
You've already ruined my... I'm out.
I don't know what I did wrong.
Audience to clap real quick. We have to sync the mics.
Oh, no, don't. We can't film them, then I won't know.
But we hear the clap. Why do you think they're clapping? It's
Shit,
the sound.
you're right. Oh, crap, sorry.
Family friendly, Mike.
Here.
This
I'll
is
clap.
not what I do.
Someone in the audience clap for me. Your audience name.
That'll work, yeah.
And scene.
We're done. And then now for the serious portion of the night. We don't do anything serious in here.
Let's say, what are you on?
Guardians, can we get this one ejected from the audience, please? I don't need this sarcasm right now. But you want to kick this thing off, Mr. Moderator?
Mr. Me? Hello. Thank you for throwing that out instead of RT shots.
I'm sorry, can you speak English for me, please?
Shut up.
I believe it's called American.
We're 3 seconds in. This always happens.
Yeah.
Why are you like this?
Because I love you, baby doll.
What happened to family friend?
I ship this so
already-
hard right now.
How did we get to this?
It's wholesome
You absolutely
content.
should. Yeah,
it's wholesome.
I accept this.
But yes, I'm Liam. I am a streamer. I'm part of the Bottom Shelf family of podcasters and YouTube phenomenon.
No one actually cares, it's fine.
I care. Womp. And now we have...
Is it my turn?
Yeah, it's you.
Hi.
Ken Wizzle.
My name is Kenway. I'm also from the YouTube channel Bottom Shelf, and I run all of our podcasts and stuff.
Okay.
Also, there was supposed to be a guy named David here, but I haven't seen him.
Oh yeah, so I'm David, also known as also known as Portal 64 or the Vitalcast guy, because that's my podcast, and that's been an on-running joke ever since the panel. So
Oh, I thought your name was Jean.
Jean Arc, that's who I'm cosplaying. Yeah. Anyone who's seen Ruby in here? Okay, good. So I'm not looking
Pandering
weird
to the
or out of
audience.
stage. No, I'm just
He's
making
done
sure
this
they at
before.
least had some context to why I'm in a dress.
Out of the three of us, he's the one who's done this before.
That's fair.
Twice.
I mean, so here's the thing, right? What you've all just experienced is essentially a podcast, right? It's three people talking to each other about something.
Nonsense,
and
normally.
often making fun of each other.
Yes.
If you're
that's-
in our friend group.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Shut up.
And that is if you're live streaming and you have the chat just bickering at you.
Yeah, that one in particular.
Yeah. Hit the ban hammer real hard.
So hey, what are we doing?
Now,
I think you had the list.
I do
There's a
have the
list.
list. There's a list, yeah.
I saw a list at one point. I think I signed the list. I don't
signed-
have the list.
Wait, what the
Mr.
hell did you
Podcast
sign?
guy one.
Was I not supposed to sign the list?
There was no signature on that.
I didn't sign anything.
How many of you out here actually have or want to start a podcast? Anyone? Okay, everyone.
Why
put
they're
your-
here, Ken.
wow.
Wait.
That's
Put,
great.
put your hands down. I want you to audibly tell me if you have a podcast. How many of you out here either have or want to start a podcast? There we go. Energy, man.
That's
a
why
lot.
they're here.
Yeah.
Right. Well, look, maybe they were outside, saw the pretty boy in a dress,
I mean, that's
wanted
fair.
to come inside, right?
Yeah.
Who wouldn't?
I'm trying to act flamboyant for those who are just listening, not seeing a visual. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about how to start your podcast, produce it, and also monetize it, which is, I assume, the big question for a lot of people. It's very daunting for a lot of people.
It's hard.
It really is.
It's gotten easier, but it's still
It's-
real hard.
But we could start from basics.
It's a family-friendly panel. No jokes on that one.
I thought
Okay.
that was the joke.
I had to try real hard there.
So anyway, we had a checklist. Do we want to go down it? Do we want to riff? What's the goal?
Riff it.
Great.
Riff.
So how do you start a podcast? Well, you find people, or I guess you don't. There's people who do it by themselves. Do you have guests in your podcast usually?
Yeah.
both.
No, I ideally have a guest or I have a air quotes dedicated co-host
Sure.
that, in case I don't have a guest, that I have someone to talk to. I have run like one episode where most of it was me by myself, and then the co-host showed up halfway in.
Sorry, I'm late, guys.
Do you podcast with us usually? Is that
Might as well, right?
Was it Alex?
garbage truck on fire?
Yeah.
So tell us. Let's do this. Tell us
Okay.
about Vitalcast.
Okay.
And like how often comes out, what you guys talk about, yada yada.
Oh man, you just remind me of something I meant to say in my last panel, and I didn't say it.
It's okay, just say it now. They'll all hear.
Okay, so Vitalcast is a Ruby-themed podcast, so we talk about Ruby. The best time to run a Ruby podcast is when Ruby is airing, or at least some form of it, like Ruby Chibi. For the last couple months, we've been off and on doing an episode. It's like, okay, do we have enough stuff about Ruby to talk about? Or if we have a new guest or Ruby tuber on YouTube that we're like, hey, they just caught up with the show, let's talk to them. Or
Sure.
they're still in the show, let's talk to them. But for the most part, we'll run every Friday, which is the day before the next episode comes out. So most people will be caught up with the recent episode and we don't spoil them.
So do you guys typically take breaks then in the off season when there is no Ruby
Yeah.
happening at all?
Yeah, I meant to say in the panel, like, hey guys, this is pretty much the last Vitalcast until Volume 7's about to come out. So,
And that's
yeah, we're on break.
oh
it's
god,
a
I already
couple
forgot.
months.
It's a few months out though,
Yeah,
right?
it's a few months out,
Very cool.
at least.
So as far as Bottom Shelf goes, we do a podcast. Well, I guess technically every week now.
Yeah. There's two.
Because we have two shows now. One of them, which is the one that very much resembles what we're doing up here, which is talking about nonsense for and
This is
roughly an
education,
hour.
Kenway, not nonsense.
Not leading up to now, it was his education. They come out every other week, and I think that having a schedule of some kind is really important. People want to know when they can expect to see the next episode of your show. So even like David was just saying, when the show is in, or when Ruby is running, they come out every Friday before the next episode. And people being able to know, like, the episode comes out on Friday, like you have your podcast app set to auto download. You know when to go refresh it and check for it and listen to it. There's a lot of the ones I listen to. I have routines where I know like on Tuesday afternoon at work I'm going to do this specific thing because the Adventure Zone comes out, and I want to be able to listen to that the second it comes out because the story is really good and I can't wait any longer.
It's like your favorite TV show, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
Like schedule is super important. Whether it's any sort of content, you need to let people know when you're going to release something, when you're going live, when you're doing something. Because if they don't know, how are they going to turn up?
Yeah, how do they show up?
And if it's not regular, then it's just going to confuse them. It's like, oh, it comes out Friday this week, but it's coming out Wednesday.
And let me tell you,
the consistency is absolutely key.
think very, very carefully about choosing every other week as a release date for your podcast, because we've been doing it for a little over 2 years, and people still ask when it's coming out because they just can't quite get the rhythm right. Weekly shows seem to be really good if you have the amount of time to do it and pull it off. But I mean, people still turn up as long as they know when to show up.
Yeah. Like same day, same time.
Dope.
Yeah.
But but the thing is with starting, you need to do your research. You need to know what you're going to talk about, who you're going to have on, what's the theme of your podcast, what's the motive behind it, why are you doing it?
Right.
Because
And also what kind of like vibes
Yeah.
and mood you want with it too, because that's kind of important.
Yeah, and then that's something I think is really cool about your show is that you guys have there is a thing that you are basing your discussion around, and so not saying that that's easier, but you have when everyone watches the new episode of Ruby, right? You have an outline of here's all this stuff that we know that we can talk about now, and everyone's kind of immediately on the same page,
Yeah.
which is super nice.
It's super nice, except for when you're like, hey, how about this thing that I plan to talk about for 10 minutes? And then they're like, 2 sentences. And you're like, thanks, we got an hour to fill.
Well, and that's just part of it. I think learning to kind of move with the flow, go on with things.
Yeah.
Is sometimes you'll be like, man, this really big thing happened, and I want to talk about it for half the show. And then 10 minutes in, you're out of things to say, and you go, I don't know what to fill the next 60 minutes with because this is supposed to be an hour and 15-minute show. Or you say, well, there's this one really big thing that I want to talk about, but we have a couple small things first, and then the small things take up 50 minutes, and you go, well, I don't have time for the topic of the show now. It happens, and it's totally normal. If you ever watch any episode of our show, they never go the way that we plan them to.
tangent massively.
It is tangent city all day, every day, but that's okay, right? If that's the vibe that you like and it's what you want to do, there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm a big believer in creating the type of content that you want to create, because if it's something that you like and that you enjoy, chances are there are more people out there in the world that will also like and enjoy that same thing. And then you like what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right?
And you can put more effort into something you really, really are passionate about.
Yeah, and that's if you really love what you're doing, you love what you're talking about, you love the process of making the show, and there's no hang-ups, it's a lot easier when it's Thursday night at 4 o'clock in the morning and you just recorded the episode that's an hour and a half long that's supposed to come out at Friday morning at 10 a.m. to stay up and finish editing that podcast instead of saying, screw it, it can come out next week.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
That was fun.
We do that a lot.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a lot of your audience interact with your content and like help fill in the gaps for you run out of stuff to talk about?
So we used to do our podcast live on Twitch every single week. And the dynamic for that is very different for sure. And for us, like we understand most of our podcast audience listens via the podcast apps. So they have us on either iTunes, Pocket Casts, any of those kind of things. And so we always tried to tailor our show more to that crowd, even when we were doing stuff live. But yeah, I mean, any of us saying something and then the live chat jumping in and having some kind of opinion to interject into that will always inevitably change the pace of the show. And that can be either good or bad, depending on what you want to do.
Yeah. For me, if we ever like run out of stuff to say, like if we had our bucket list of stuff to say and we went through it a lot faster than we wanted to, that's usually when I would turn to the live chat. I'm like, oh, hey, so-and-so 123 said this. That's an interesting point. And then sometimes that's what we go off on like 20-minute tangents from.
Sure, yeah. And we have a couple segments that we've kind of unofficially shoved into our show from time to time that I try to like proactively solicit things from people who listen to our show because I think it's fun, right? It's more fun for like the unexpected of I don't know what they're gonna say, and then I try to keep those things secret from the other guys in the show too, so that like when we get something from the audience, we can all kind of experience it together at the same time, and then what you get is a more genuine reaction. Also, not for everyone, right? Sometimes like you need to have everything planned out to the T, and everyone needs to know what's going on and have time to research. It really depends on the type of show that you're doing.
Absolutely. Like if you're doing a news podcast, for example,
Right.
like you can more research ahead of time. Like,
Or even just comparing the podcast that we do here, David Chillick, they have a new episode of Ruby comes out. They all have to watch that episode, or else they don't know what to talk about. Versus the Bottom Shelf podcast, where we just show up and hope that the next 45 minutes of our life goes really well.
Unless we have some topics, well, the Gamecast specifically.
Oh yeah,
Words are hard.
games. So we also do a video game podcast every other week on the opposite of our main show, and that one's a lot easier to fill content for because there's always things
Segments.
happening in the video games news, right? I mean, we can't seem to go a week without some huge AAA game being an utter disappointment and a waste of money.
Yeah, pretty much.
Anthem.
Too soon, or
I think they've had their time. I don't
yeah.
think it's too soon anymore.
nah? But it's one of those things where it's just you get the rhythm going and you get the topics going, you get that research down, and like you said, if you enjoy it, you'll absolutely nail it. Because at the end of the day, you've got to post it out there, you've got to produce it, and I feel like that leads beautifully onto these things with the very technical side of podcasts. Because bad audio is a thing, and it hurts my soul.
I mean, so yeah, same. I mean, I wouldn't have traveled all the way across the country with our entire podcast rig today if I wasn't concerned about being able to later then release this to our own community.
Yeah.
I think that's actually one of the things that there are two very strong camps for on either side. So talking about as far as like gear, production value, the whole thing. There's a lot of people out there that will say like, just go make the thing. And I'm really big on this.
Yeah.
If you want to do a thing, no one's stopping you from you. Go do it. However, there are going to be drawbacks if you don't take the time to like try to learn something about how audio or video works, invest in the gear to do it. And it's not nearly as scary or expensive as anyone thought, or as a lot of people think. Right now, we're recording up here with probably roughly $4,000 worth of audio gear.
Okay.
Don't break anything.
But you don't have to. I mean, you can start recording with a $50 microphone that you find on like Sweetwater, Amazon, anything that you've
I said it
got.
was like 300.
I started on a Blue Snowflake, which is a $20 microphone.
Yeah.
And
And
that
even-
sound quality was good.
Even that kind of a starting point will put you immensely ahead of like recording into your phone or onto your laptop. And I'm very big. Like I honestly cannot listen to shows that have bad audio quality, and a big part of that is because I listen to all my podcasts in the car. And if there's background noise and everything else all going on, and I can't understand what you're saying, why would I listen to your show? And there's like huge podcasts out there that have a huge budget that still have this issue, and it boggles my mind.
Like you said, it doesn't take a lot. It took 10 minutes of research for me to find a mixer for the microphone, get it, easy.
Yeah.
It's not as daunting. It's definitely worth investing in that small a small amount, really. And you don't need, like you said, yeah, there's $4,000, but
Yeah, like
crazy.
our expensive is stupid setup,
Yeah,
and no
yeah.
one needs to do that right
yeah,
away.
it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah,
But
I'm on the end of like, hey, like get away with as cheap as you possibly can for
absolutely.
as long
Yeah.
as you can. Because on my setup, other than like the PC that I'm recording stuff on, I'm on like a $90 microphone, but could honestly still be getting away on that $20
Yeah,
Snowflake.
for
'cause,
sure.
There are free programs like in OBS and stuff that you could put in your own like
like noise gates.
You
and
can put in your
suppression,
gauges and all that to
compression.
Yeah.
avoid peaking, and like there's ways to improve your audio for free or super cheap, and I highly encourage that
Yeah.
before you invest in
Knowledge is
more
power.
equipment.
Yeah, and even something. I'm gonna stop talking into the microphone real quick. This guy right here. This is a Shure SM58. This thing's $100, and this thing will never break. You will buy this microphone, and you could spend the entirety of the next like 2 years of your life throwing it against the wall when you get angry because no one's listening to your podcast. Hi, hello. And you can do that, and this thing will never fail you. And if it does, you'll have realized it's because you threw it in the wall 76 times, and that you probably had that one coming. And it's not the greatest microphone in the world, but it sounds fine. I mean, even in a panel room like this with 6-inch speakers 50 feet above your head, it works, right? And this microphone is super easy to work with, and if you take an hour, maybe 2 hours watching YouTube videos on how to mix voice audio using a lot of free software solutions out there, you can go from having a phone conversation to like a really well-produced, good-sounding show.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's one of those things, there's a gap. Like, so you spend up to like, say, $100 for like this microphone. Like, you could spend thousands more. The quality will not change that much.
Yeah.
Like, it changes quite dramatically up to that point, and then there's always a cap where your hardware or software will you don't need to spend thousands, and it's
Yeah, and I
real
think
nice.
even for us, because we just got these microphones that we're talking into separately here. We just replaced all of our microphones in the last month or two, maybe. Help me out, Jake. 2 months, yeah. With all of these, and to us, it was a huge difference, right? Like we all noticed the audio quality jump immediately, but we were already using really nice microphones like that would have been totally fine. We're just audio nuts, and we wanted a better sounding podcast. And fortunately, there's 5 of us in our group, so we don't have to have one person trying to front everything all the time, which makes things
normally
easier.
happens though.
Yeah. Don't attack me like that.
Calling you shenanigans.
Yeah, there's
Almost
a ton of
broken.
really great software out there. YouTube has all the answers for you as far as like, how do I mix audio? And there's I don't know if any of you have ever heard of the audio software Reaper. It's $60 for a commercial license of the software, and it comes with everything you need to be able to mix audio. It's got equalizers, compressors, the whole
Literally
bit.
everything.
Yeah, and there's a ton of videos out there on the internet that teach you how to use them and what to listen for. And it will take time. You will not watch a 2-hour video and go, I'm an audio genius right now. I worked in audio before I started my podcast, and it's only been about in the last 4 to 5 months that I really feel like we're nailing it on the audio quality of the show. So like, it will still take time, but find videos that you like, that you understand, you can wrap your head around, and go back and revisit them every 2 or 3 months. Because you'll find that the more your ear develops, the better that you'll get, and then you'll go back and you'll listen to the same information and take so many new things out of it because you've just gotten that much better in that time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I usually save those videos in a playlist, and I call them like education or something, just so they're easier to find later on.
Beat it into your head.
Oh yeah, beat it.
It's a family-friendly panel.
I didn't mean it in that way, but then you reacted that way, so it became that
Your
way.
reaction, Kenway. This is all you.
Okay, fair. Let's see here. What else? So I guess we can talk a little bit about monetizing. I know we're moving really fast, but the more time I think we have for Q&A and ripping at the end is
well,
better.
monetization is the big, daunting beast.
So here's the thing. If you want to start a podcast and you want to make money, the first thing you need is a great podcast that people will actually listen to. Because you will not make money if no one's listening to your show.
Focus on the content
Hi, hello.
first.
Found a shelf.
I listen.
There is, however, there's a couple of really awesome tools that have come around in the last couple of years that make this part really easy. The first and the most obvious one that I'm sure all of you have seen all over the internet for the last few years is Patreon, right?
Yeah.
Where you can directly just say, hey, this show that we're making, we spend hours and hours and hours on every single week, takes a lot of time and it's really hard. And if you like that, if you could even just support us for $1 a month, like it's really helpful, and people do it. Like they genuinely, people in 2019 really want to help support the things that we make, and a lot of our patrons are actually here today, which is really fucking freaking cool. Wow. I caught myself almost. So Patreon is really great. If you do live streams on Twitch or YouTube, they both have systems that once you've been doing it for a little bit, they can help come in.
They have a new thing that's recently come out. It's been a little controversial.
You're talking about sub-only?
Sub-only streams. And,
yeah.
but I think that's a really good idea. Now,
I think as long as you use it for the right thing.
yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
It's not a growth tool, it's a reward tool.
Yeah, it's always good to reward your audience. I just know with that controversial thing,
Yeah,
with
it's
sub only on Twitch, a lot of, Twitch is mostly like video game live streams.
Right.
And a lot of those terms of services are, you cannot be paid to provide the stream.
Right.
And so that's where there's a big contradiction right there.
Yeah.
But for a podcast like your own, that's fine.
Absolutely. And one of the cool things that I got really excited about sub-only mode for Twitch, which, it seems self-explanatory just in case, is like a mode on Twitch now where you can come in and you can stream live only for the people who are actively paying you through Twitch to do that, right? Which for us says that like we put out our podcast once every 2 weeks, and every 2 weeks when we do that, we release a second half of the show. So our show, well, half is rough.
Like a post show.
Right, it's a post show. So we have a 45-minute show, and then we do another 20 or 30 minutes that goes on our Patreon, and it's only for people who pay to support us. And so now with sub-only streams on Twitch, we could theoretically go back to streaming our show live and then just cut to sub-only once we get to the post show, and now people who are paying us can also watch us live if they want to. And for me, that was huge. Like, it's another way that we can bring our content to the people who want to see it in one way or the other.
Yeah. And I feel like it's one of those things, people demonize monetization so much. And it's like, because people like they want to do it because they're passionate about it, but then they're like, they don't seem like they're just doing it for money and
Right.
there's all these
like, well,
mental
if you love
factors.
it,
And
why do you need money?
It's like,
And
if you're putting the work in, if you know you're providing value, don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm working really hard on this. I'm giving you value. This is the...
Yeah, and that was
how
actually
much-
something that we talked about a lot when we first started Bottom Shelf, is that we launched day one, day and date with a Patreon page. And it wasn't because it was like, hey, we're here solely to make money. It was for several reasons. One of which was we don't want to do this for free for 3 years and then come knocking on people's doors for money afterwards, because that is an immediate, oh, well, you've been doing it for free this whole time. What changed? Right? Like that's controversy, and I've seen it happen over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. So we didn't want to set a standard and then change the standard halfway into the game. And the other part is that like this stuff is hard, right? I mean, like buying microphones, buying video cameras, like we have to spend a lot of our own money, even on a monthly basis, just to like keep things moving and keep things going. And so we make I don't know, $60-70 a month on Patreon right now, and that is like immense. I mean, I bought this microphone that I'm talking into right now. It's huge.
Yeah. Streams is an investment on both ends.
Right.
And
I think if people can see that like the money that they are giving you is directly helping fund and go into the quality of the content that they're receiving, that people tend to have an easier time with that as well.
Yeah, and there's also like a lot of work you put in outside of doing the live show or the recording session. Like you have to read your analytics. You have to like keep learning how to do stuff, because sometimes algorithms change too, and you have to learn to adjust with that.
The A word. No.
I'm sorry. I remembered this was family
Anchor?
friendly. I shouldn't have said that.
Oh, yeah, that's a better A word. Anchor. That's a great A word.
Solid segue.
Has anyone ever heard of the podcast service Anchor.fm? Anyone at all? I keep fooling you. Don't raise your hands. Yell at me. Perfect. So that is a problem, right? Anchor FM is a relatively new podcast service that just came out, similar to Podbean, Libsyn, all of those, where you upload your content to there and they push it out to the iTunes app, the Google Podcast app, everywhere that so you could want to listen to the podcasts. And for one, they just got bought by Spotify, so now they've got unlimited budget, and their platform has gotten immensely better ever since they did that.
And that's a good case scenario.
Yeah, but the cool thing is that there's no monthly cost; it's completely free, so you don't have to pay them to use their service. And the bigger thing is that they actively try to sell advertisers for your show
from day one.
From day one, the second that you sign up. And so we launched our new podcast 14 or 15 weeks ago for video games, and the very first episode we had a sponsor. And we were sponsored for 5 or 6 weeks by the Black Tux, which was, shout out to them. That was super cool. So we launched a brand new show with absolutely no following, already technically making money, right? And it isn't a ton, but every dollar counts when you're a small creator on the internet, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I could atone to that because a lot of my spending money to get here to RTX is actually from donations from my viewers and
Hell yeah.
listeners. And yeah, it's great because like sometimes like I'll make more than what I make at my normal job if people are very generous. But you know, it's unpredictable. You can't always.
Yeah,
go,
you can't
okay.
rely on.
Yeah,
Right.
you can't rely on donations, but like that's why things like Patreon
Yeah.
or I forgot the word sponsors are very important.
Yeah,
'cause
sponsors
those,
is definitely key.
those are a
Yeah.
little more consistent.
Well, and the cool thing about sponsors too is that, and there's people who get annoyed by them existing inevitably, right? But that is a source of financial stability that is coming in for you that your fans don't have to pay for. And if they really want to, they can just fast forward and skip through the ad, right? They don't actually have to listen to it.
Yeah.
Which I definitely never do. I listen to every advertisement on
Of
every
course.
podcast that I listen to.
I always listen to
I buy all of
Today
the
and
products.
Awesome from Philip DeFranco.
Right. Yeah. And I definitely, actually, in all honesty, definitely couldn't play back every single word of the Casper ad that I listen to on 18 different shows every single week. I have no idea what they say.
I don't even know what Casper is.
But how?
He's a ghost. He's a ghost.
Yeah, do we want to cover anything else? Do we want to open up some questions? What do you
I just
think?
want to one more thing on sponsors because there are different types of sponsors, right?
Yeah, sure.
Because you've got your clicks per view, you've got clicks per download, views per like per thousand. There's so
Your
many different types.
CPM.
Yes, your CPM. There's so many different types of sponsors. There's loads out there. So don't be afraid to reach out as well. Don't be afraid to reach out to sponsors because
Oh, yeah,
if you don't ask,
I mean,
what's
you don't
the
ask,
say?
you
Say
never
no.
know.
You're like, all right, cool.
well, and shoot, even for a channel our size, like just out of pure like dumb luck, I started tweeting at DiGiorno on Twitter because
It's not delivery. It's
they don't know
DiGiorno.
what's coming. I just started tweeting at them one day because like I noticed that their social media like manager was real funny. He's always just posting ridiculous stuff. They're always posting ridiculous stuff, and they're really good about responding to people. And then over the course of like 6 months, I built a relationship with DiGiorno's social media manager. And then when we did our 24-hour Extra Life live stream last year, they sent us pizza to eat for the whole stream, just out of nowhere. Wow. And so it wasn't like they didn't send us money, but they sent us not having to buy food for our charity stream, right? And it's a fun story, and like our antics. If you search for both of our, we've sent some ridiculous things back and forth, and it's great. But like that's still support. That's still a company like publicly doing a thing for you, which is, I mean, just so beyond helpful and a huge like mental thing when you're trying to stream too.
For sure.
Which is huge when you're trying to go 24 hours without a break.
That's why you don't go 24 hours. You have people to hop in and out.
Yeah, that helps. Unless
people?
the stream goes down every half an hour, and then you have to stay up.
Well,
Hi, hello.
get better internet.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep.
I just heard you start talking, so I assumed
Oh
you had something
yeah.
to say.
Well, I was also going to say like a really good piece of advice I learned from Mr. Bernie Burns here at Rooster Teeth is try to get your content as many places as possible.
Yeah.
Because
We were just talking about that last night.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for me, mostly Vitalcast, my podcast has been YouTube only. But the last couple months, I've been working on converting all 76 episodes to audio only. And
That is an undertaking.
I want to die.
Same.
Release me from this physical plane. But I've been converting the episodes to audio only so I could send them to like iTunes,
Right.
Spotify, and all of that because those are more places people could just accidentally bump into your content. Or there are people in my audience who are like, hey, I would love to listen to this in the car on the way to work, you know,
Right.
if they can't make it live or want to watch the YouTube video in the background while they're
Yeah,
cleaning
well, and
the
I mean,
house.
there's some people. You know, we make a video podcast, right? And there's nothing much to see. We have a podcast set, and it's pretty. And like I do the best I can to make it look like really high quality every week. But at the most part, it's just 3 dudes sitting around a table or 4 dudes sitting around a table. It's not much to look at. But if people actively consume content on YouTube and don't want to stare at a still image for 2 hours while you talk about terrible things. It gives them something to watch, right? And now they're consuming content in the place
And you can see
where
the
they're
reactions. You can see the
going. Right.
or those sick dabs that the audience request.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fair. Same.
There will be no dabbing.
Okay.
Why you
sorry.
like this?
Just
Hey, Jake, cut that. That's an old joke. Good Lord. Yeah, do you want to do questions?
Sure. Absolutely. Do we have a microphone?
Yeah,
We
right
do.
there.
Hey, so if any of you actually have questions, feel free to come over and ask them. Otherwise, we'll just make fun of each other for the next half hour, I guess.
I mean, I make fun of you anyway.
But please, have questions. Come talk to us.
Like David,
I know.
how many strings are still holding that strap up to your dress?
Not enough. Or too
Too
little.
many.
It is
Too
not
many
enough.
is the answer there.
I guess who you are. It's too many or too less.
You in the nice shirt.
Oh, thank you. Graham Becker, long-time listener, first-time talker. So, have you signed like NDAs with any of your sponsors at all?
Absolutely not. I don't sign my name on anything.
Okay, fantastic. You,
That part's a joke. But no, we haven't had to sign anything.
okay, so what kind of, what exactly did someone like Black Tux offer you monetarily for however long they were a?
So they actually had a pretty solid CPM, if I remember right. CPM, for those of you who don't know, is cost per. The M means something, but it's like thousands. I don't remember what the actual word is, but it means thousand, right? And so they say like we'll pay you X amount of money for every 1,000 impressions that you get on your podcast. And I want to say theirs was like $20 or $30, which is actually pretty high comparative to a lot of them. I think the average is like 14.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, even with a podcast as small as ours, we still made a couple bucks off of it at least.
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
Deeply related to the previous one. Do you have any experience with a sponsor that you ended up regret taking, and what was that course of action afterwards?
Well, first off, what's your name?
Dawson.
Dawson, nice to meet you. We haven't, as far as I know. We've only had a few. DiGiorno was the cool one because it was very obnoxious in public. We've worked with Spreadshop.
Spreadshop.
Ugh.
Who are they? Who gave us money?
Yeah, no kidding. The Black Tux and a couple other ones, and they've all been pretty easy. I mean, honestly, Anchor does a lot of the work for you.
Yeah.
And so like I didn't even have to talk to somebody from the Black Tux about the business stuff. They just kind
Yeah.
of like popped into our inbox and said, "Hey, we want to support your show. Read this ad and we'll pay you." Like we didn't
Yeah.
have to go back and forth and negotiate. It was like just
Yeah.
this is totally fine.
But if you're uncomfortable with it and you feel like, yeah, I don't believe in this sponsor, I don't believe in this ad, you don't have to.
Yeah, you never have to. And there's actually one of the really cool things about Anchor is that you can pre-record the ad and like punch it in wherever you want to. And so I could actually sit there instead of doing a live read in the middle of the podcast. I could
Splice it in.
sit alone in my room with a microphone, record it line by line, edit it really nice, put some music behind it to make it less boring, and like actually make sure that everything was as it was supposed to be. And then that same ad just ran every week before our show, which
then
was
you-
super helpful.
Then you can splice it instead of just being a random tangent just in there.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
Awesome, appreciate it.
Anytime. Is that what it is?
how much is DiGiorno pizza?
Cost per DiGiorno.
Hello, Logan.
Wondering how long does it take each of you on your sort of on months, because I know the podcast is
Yeah.
always on. How long do you spend working in a given week or a given month to actually make your given production?
All the time.
I don't sleep. I'm lucky to get 3 or 4
Yeah.
hours of sleep on a night, especially when the podcast is supposed to come out. For us, it's a little harder because we all meet in person to do our podcast. And like Alex, one of our hosts who's not here, has to drive 2 hours. I drive an hour and a half from work to get there and pick up Jake on the way, wherever he went.
Oh.
And so like it's a little bit.
It varies.
There's a lot more scheduling for us. We have to like all try to get in the same place. And sometimes, like I said earlier, our show comes out every other Friday at 10 a.m. And sometimes we are recording Thursday night at 11. And that means that we have to do the whole 2-hour show after I drive 45 minutes to an hour and a half there, 45 minutes home after that, and then cut the 2-hour podcast, bounce it, upload it to YouTube, title it, thumbnail. I mean, I have to get everything done before I go to sleep, which is sometimes at 5 o'clock in the morning. So it can be a lot of work, but it is as much work, I think, as what you want to make.
Yeah,
it.
and like I said, that's for your situation.
Right.
It depends on what type of podcast you do. If it's like a one-on-one interview, like if it's over Discord or Skype, those things are a lot more. a lot easier to regulate, a lot easier to schedule. So you can plan that throughout the week. Then you say, like,
Yeah.
hey, like the day before, and then like make sure you've got all your questions ready.
Yeah,
It's a constant process.
That's cool. That's more what you do, right?
Yeah, that is.
It doesn't
actually
stop.
very much Vitalcast. For Vitalcast, a lot of it is. If I'm lucky, I get enough requests on a specific person as a guest, and then I spend a lot of time trying to get their attention, talking to them, getting to know them, being like, "Hey, do you want to be on a Vitalcast?" And they're like, "Sure." And then it's all just trying to like manage us to be on Discord at the same time and hope the internet connection is good. So I spend about 5 to 6 hours a week, which makes me feel really bad for you. But I'm
I asked
also
for it. It's okay.
yeah, but I also throw in some like other researching time, but that's usually stuff I'd be doing anyways. So it's like might as well kill 2 birds with 1 stone and use that for Vitalcast.
Sure.
So I don't necessarily count that as Vitalcast work time.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 podcasts. I don't know if any of you guys listen to either Critical Role or The Adventure Zone.
I cosplayed the Critical
Yeah,
Role this
there we
last
go.
week.
Nerds unite. I like it. Those are 2 very similar shows done completely differently, right? Critical Role is live streamed on Twitch, and when it's done, they chop off the ends and upload it to YouTube. That's it. That's the whole thing. They just pull the audio and the video right off the stream. Versus the Adventure Zone, the McElroys do a Skype call, once every other week, and then Griffin spends 5 hours at writing music and inserting that in, cutting out everyone. Like all the table talk, looking up the rules, every time someone says like he like really microprocesses that down into a 45-minute show, and that's a huge job if you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons before. And those are 2 podcasts that at the end user are very similar, but done completely differently, right? Does that help?
Yeah. You're welcome.
Hello.
My name's Caden.
Welcome, Kaden.
I was kind of curious to get your advice on if you have an audio podcast and you wanted to upload to YouTube. A blank screen is very boring. So what would be like if you were doing it? What would you do?
I mean, we started with audio.
Yes, I don't want to keep talking, but I can answer this one pretty easily. So yeah, there's a couple of different things you can do. I'm actually right now. We were just talking about the Adventure Zone being an audio-only podcast. Bottom Shelf is actually working on putting together our Dungeons and Dragons show at the time, and it's going to be much more in the vein of the Adventure Zone, probably, in that it's going to be heavily edited. And because of that, we're not doing video. What I did that I think is hopefully going to work out well is I found an audio visualizer plugin for Final Cut Pro, which I don't actually use Final Cut, but if you want cool plugins, that's kind of the software you have to use. But it just like creates a bunch of shapes in the screen that all react to the audio that you upload to it. I think that's going to be a decent way
Audio
to solve
visualizers are
it.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
It's
plugin.
by Pixel Film Studios, I want to say. It's like $40. It was like super
Yeah.
affordable.
One thing I would recommend that might be $40, maybe a little bit more, but I would find a graphic artist that could do like a moving visual for you. That's just like what would normally be a still image, but has a little bit of life of it.
Yeah.
And then maybe
Yeah.
throw that visualizer on top of it so it has a little bit more life.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of stuff that you can find to do that as well, also for Final Cut, where it's just like pre-rendered. Honestly, if you type any effect that you want to in on YouTube and then add the word green screen behind it,
Yeah.
there's a ton of like
Yeah.
just particle effects and pixels and things that you can put to just make the image move a little bit, so it's not quite so boring. All that kind of stuff helps for sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Or you could commission people. There are people that you can commission that do specifically things like that.
That's what we do for all of our stuff. Yeah, all of our intro slates and outro stuff. I commission a friend of mine who's really good and stupid
And you
cheap.
can just search commissions open on Twitter and you'll find it.
Yeah.
Hello.
What would be like some nice little tips and tricks you would say to like building your brand as a podcast?
Ooh. That's
How
good.
about you start on this one? 'Cause I know this is something very
Yeah.
important to you,
Well,
and I'll interject.
Well, the first thing is like you need to think, why do I want to do a podcast? Do I want to do it to get my voice out? Do I want to get it? What's the theme of the podcast? The brand building is, I'd say, key at the start, but don't drown yourself in it because your mind will explode. You just feel like you want to die. It's one of those processes. It can take a while. but once you find it, it will just click. And with myself, my whole source of content is mindset and getting to a positive mindset and a healthy positive mindset, not toxic positive crap.
Yeah.
But so what I could say advise is sit down for a couple of hours. If you have any ideas that come into your head throughout your day or where it is, write it down. These sorts of things, because I've started writing things down in the last couple of months and making them happen.
It helps it stick. Too.
Yeah.
Like you remember it a lot more.
Yeah, because if you write it down, you have it in a book, because it will just go out of my mind. I'll eat pasta later and be like, what was I thinking about? And it would just fall out. So take some time for just yourself and think about what you want to do and what message you want to get across.
Something I picked up really recently. I don't know if you're familiar with Matt Koval at all. He's a Dungeons and Dragons creator. Yeah, there we go. And I watched something the other day that was very specifically about creating memorable NPCs in D&D and like what it was that does that. And he drew a lot of the questions people were asking were drawn to these very specific characters from different D&D shows. And one of the things that he touched on as far as like building a character that people like and can remember is doing like finding the thing that you want to do and not being afraid to go all in on it.
Yeah.
And so like I'm sure everyone in here at some point has come into contact with a shirtless Greg Miller, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and a single man in this, or a single person in this entire building that hasn't seen him topless at some point or another. But that's part of Greg, right?
Yeah.
He's the loud, obnoxious, like when he walks into a room,
Right.
you know that he walks
Yeah.
into a room. And so it's really hard sometimes to kind of break out of that shell and be like, this is the character that I want to be. I'm going to be it relentlessly and ruthlessly. And like the people who connect with that are going to stay around. And like, or be on the other side of like, oh, this is kind of what I want to do, but I don't know how people will take it. Like, I think if there's one big piece of advice that I could give you is find that thing that you passionately want to do and just ruthlessly do that. Yeah.
Double down on it. And as hard as it is, don't let if someone's judging you on it, just say, well, it's my thing, go away.
And understand it's probably going to be bad for a long time, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's going to take time to refine
that
it.
thing that you are unapologetically and ruthlessly doing is going to be cringy as crap the first few times that you do it.
Yeah, you're gonna have growing pains.
Yeah, and even for me, over the course of the last 54 episodes of our show that we've done, I've been trying to refine and tweak how I wanted to host the show, right? And I think for the first time this last episode that we did, I ran through the whole intro, and one of my co-hosts looked at me and goes, "Was that new? That was cool. I like that." I've been working on this for 2 years. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Howdy.
Hello.
Hello.
Will you pipe down?
Okay.
Just looking for some advice from y'all.
Sure.
So me and my friends, we wanted to start a podcast.
Do it.
And at a recreation center near where we live, there's a podcasting room with all the equipment and everything that we could use.
Amazing.
That's brilliant. Why don't I
That
have
saves
this?
you so
Yeah,
much
do
money.
it. Why are you here? Go make your podcast.
So, if you would recommend doing that to at least start out with,
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
grow equipment later, or just go straight from
Yeah.
So many people get caught up on not knowing how to start. If there's a resource like that you can get to, that you can just sign out a room that has everything you need, go make your podcast. Leave RTX. Go make your podcast. Do the thing.
it.
I'm just kidding. Stay and have a good time. But seriously, yes, absolutely use that resource.
Saves you a
100%.
lot of money at the beginning.
Oh,
and
yeah,
really
that'll save you
just
so much.
the education.
Yeah,
you know?
especially if there's if you said doing your friends, right? So it's, 2, 3, 4, however many people that is, that just amplifies the amount of cost it takes to get the equipment to start doing it. So if you have all that freely available to you, use it. Do it.
We got the resources, use it.
Absolutely.
welcome.
Can we clap for people making questions?
How do you guys find that SEO changes and affects your content planning? And then on the back
We're getting to the algorithm thing again, aren't we?
it's important.
It is.
So on the back end, when you're in your editing and post-production, is there a beat sheet structure that you look at and sort of model?
You guys want to jump in this one?
I was gonna say with YouTube in the last year especially, it's been changing a lot. So it's the minute you get adjusted, you have to readjust again. And it's really hard to find like exactly what's gonna help improve stuff because a lot of the resources are years behind on letting
Yeah.
it come out.
And YouTube, I think, is trying to get better as far as like they're trying to tell people
They
when
can
they're
try.
making changes. Like by there's
yeah,
if you
their
have a YouTube
creator
account,
monthly email. Yeah.
They've started like making YouTube videos like for like their own branded YouTube account that's trying to say like, hey, here are the things that we're changing. But in order to know what they're changing, you kind of had to have known what it was before too, which is hard. You can find a lot of like things not to do, like don't swear in the first 30 seconds of your YouTube video because that'll ding you if you do.
Yep.
I know I use an app called TubeBuddy, I think, to help. Yeah, because they'll tell you like, hey, you had this word in your description, but you didn't type it, or you didn't type it in the title and the tags, right? Like they want you to like triple down on everything. There's a lot of really tiny stuff like that is really kind of hard to wrap your head around because it changes so much and you never know what's good. I think the biggest things to focus on are having a good thumbnail because if people see your thumbnail and it's not good, they won't click on it, right? I think that's probably the most important thing. And then, just trying to dive into as much as those little like how to trick YouTube into showing your
Yeah.
video to people when they're looking for
And
it.
keywords in,
Yeah.
in your title.
Like even if you make content that's just like Markiplier, don't put Markiplier in your tags because people will search for Markiplier and not
And then
click on your
get
video, and when they don't click on your video, it deranks it. So it's tricky, but it's worth looking into at least.
Yeah, well, I was also going to say, like, if you put Markiplier in your tags and someone sees you when they look up Markiplier, they're going to remember you, but not in the way you want to be remembered.
Yeah.
So I've seen that when I look up myself and I see other people.
Yeah, and I think anything that you can do to talk about anything relevant at all on your show, because that gives you access to relevant things for your thumbnail, relevant things for your title as well, that super helps. I think all of our most watched videos on Bottom Shelf ones are on Bottom Shelf where it happened to be, like we did a Black Panther review and we managed to get that out the morning after the movie came out. And so that one like ended up with several hundred views, more than our normal shows do. And I think the next one after that was like me and a friend of mine talked about Star Wars conspiracies between Rey and Kylo Ren right after Star Wars 8 came out. And that one picked up because of the thumbnail and the title. So anything you can do relevant helps a lot.
How about beat sheet?
What's that?
How about beat sheet?
I don't know.
Borrowed from screenwriting and television writing where certain things are supposed to happen at certain times.
Oh, yeah. Like hitting certain beats.
Yeah.
Yes and no. I think that helps you more on the content creating side as more that does being found on YouTube. I know that for our show, we try to do like the first half of it and just kind of riff off the cuff and do what we do. And then I'll try to have backup like segments that we can do that I try to hit at the halfway point. And I think it helps everyone else know like, oh, hey, we're halfway done, right? And so that can help with the feel of the show and kind of keeping things on track.
And I guess
for sure.
it depends on what type of show you're going for as well, because like ours, it's rough. We've got a rough idea. We've got a rough idea of what to talk about, what's going on, but it's mostly riffed. And
Right.
then, but if it's something more,
Yeah, this
say
might
more
be a really
serious
good one
and
for you to actually.
For me, when it comes to like doing the beat and all of that, I find it a lot easier in doing something that's like pre-recorded. Whereas my stuff is all live, so that's a little harder to do. You just have to have like your bullet list and then know how you're gonna lead from one bullet to another.
Yeah.
So when you're leaving like one territory of conversation, know how to say and
how to transition
how
from
to transition
A
it
to B.
basically. And for me, I started adding like a Spitfire question segment to my show every now and then where I came up with like jokes about last week's episode. I'm like, all right, here's all these jokes. They're not actually about the show, but they're related to the show. And it makes for a fun little segment. And I usually put that near the middle. So it's like things are starting to die down and it just revamps up the energy.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Yeah, clap.
Nice beard.
Hello.
So every podcast is a beginning, and hopefully if it's good, it'll continue to go on. And both those steps are really stressful. Which one's easier? Is it easier to start from nothing and say, I want to do a podcast? Or is it easier to say, this has been going for a few months, I'm getting more comfortable? Or is it always, I gotta make it bigger and better? Is that more stressful?
I think that vastly depends on the type of show too. I think for Bottom Shelf Podcast, it's a lot easier now because we've been doing it so long, And our show is let's sit down and make inappropriate jokes and make fun of each other for 45 minutes and tell stories, right?
Yeah.
So like the hard part was getting everyone in the groove of we show up every Tuesday night or whatever that is, and we record the show and it comes out on Friday. But that's very specific to what we do.
Yeah, for me, I'm always going through the roller coaster of emotions of like, all right, this is going great. We're things are easy, and then I have my moments where I'm like, this sucks. It's gonna end, and like it's very tough. You just know when like things dip down. Like let's say your viewership takes a huge hit for whatever reason. Tough it out. Try to like learn to adapt and survive. Like for me, that's basically been learning. What?
Bear Grylls it.
Yeah. Bear Grylls it. Learn when you have to drink your own piss, and
Pretty much.
for me, I found out like, okay, I know the hot times of the season to have a Vitalcast or like a Ruby themed podcast, and when definitely not to have it, because like they said, YouTube and some algorithms they'll downvote you, and it's like, hey, if you know there's a certain time of the year where your views will not do well, it might be good to just take a break and not do it until it's the time where
And then
your podcast will
plan
be
what
good.
you want to do ahead. It's like any sort of creation in whether it's YouTube, Twitch, or anything around summer, especially. That's when a lot of viewerships take a hit. As just as an example, because people are on some holidays, they're here,
They're at
watching.
RTX and they won't watch your live stream while waiting in a line, even though it's the perfect time to do so. They're too busy making friends and memories. How could they?
Yeah. How
What is
dare
this,
they?
socializing? What is this?
Does that help?
Yeah, I'm out of time, so it has to.
Hey guys, I've been a voice actor for many years.
Jealous.
But I've seen a lot of like really weird kind of solutions, like creative solutions for soundproofing and whatnot. Like I've seen like cardboard egg cartons.
Yeah.
Packed to the
Yeah.
wall, and
Yep.
I've seen voice actors use their walk-in closet, and the clothes dampen the
Yep.
sound and it turns into a booth. What are some of y'all's favorite like improvised MacGyver solutions for like soundproofing?
This is one of my favorite questions.
I'm leaving this for you.
So
100%.
I've actually been an audio engineer for a long time. I don't know. It's longer than I like to admit because I'm not good enough for as long as I've been doing it. But this is like one of those topics that just gets so 50-50 on the internet. Like everyone's like, no, you have to buy real soundproofing and put it up. And it's just not true. It's pretty. Like the sound absorption panels that are really expensive that you can get it from Guitar Center, Sweetwater, that whole thing are really pretty and they help like with the aesthetic of the room. They're not necessary for good sound. We just actually this last week we just installed. We've been recording our podcast in a basement for the last 6 months. All cement floor, cement walls, everything.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, and thankfully, like we have a really good audio setup, so I've been able to mostly work around it without it sounding like a garbly mess. But it's been challenging, and so we like literally just bought these like $30 like room divider curtains, and those killed the sound in that room by like 80%. It's absolutely insane, and it was $60, I think. And like they actually look really nice, so I've got them hanging in on the edge of our camera now because it just kind of helps it look more like a real room, rather because we do a green screen for the whole thing. So that's been huge. But I mean, anything that you can find, the real goal for sound absorption is to stop the audio from being able to hit the wall and come back to you, right? And so if you can get whatever you're going to put a couple feet off the wall, it's just that much better.
Any of y'all have all seen or like heard of like really weird or just kind of ridiculous?
I know some people like to use socks. They'll
Yes.
put socks on top of their microphones. When I used to
Yep.
work at a music studio for a year, and we would use socks every now and then.
Yep.
Of course, we had abundance of like the soundproofing foam. We used carpet a lot as well. We would just take up crappy carpet, put it up on
Yep.
walls. So
You can find like the old 70s like shag carpets.
yeah, that's exactly
Those
what we
both,
used.
those both look really cool, and they are amazing for killing sound.
Because back in the 70s, they put like whack colors on their carpet,
And they're
like, all
super
right.
thick.
Yeah.
Like it's good stuff.
Oh yeah.
Also, and this is like if you get to a point where like you really want to invest some money into what you're doing, these microphones are called the Shure SM7. They're about $400 a piece, but they actually have the capsule inside the microphone is suspended in there, like with a shock mount, and then it has a pop filter built in, and it comes with the pop guard on the outside. And so I can get like right up on top of this thing and talk into it, and my voice will get louder, but it won't be like awful and hard to listen to. It's one of the best
creamy.
microphones ever created. It's insane.
That's extremely helpful. Thanks, guys.
Anytime, yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you. All right, we got about 6 minutes, but there's only 3 of you, so I think we can do this. Well, 2 of you.
Hi, Jake.
All right then. You mentioned earlier that you were having difficulty with moving your podcast to an audio-only format. Like, what's some of the process involved with that beyond just ripping the audio?
Well, there's like cutting out the ums every now and then, having like long periods of silence where you're like, man, we're both tired and we should probably cut these 30 seconds out. But also like maybe someone says something and like you're not sure you want to keep that in or not.
Ben.
Or like for moments like when someone's trying to talk over someone else and you're like, okay, this person's really trying to get their thing. They're both not able to communicate what they're trying to say because they're both interrupting each other and stopping and going over again. And there's just like the length. It's time consuming. So
Yeah, I think there's a really shocking difference between if you are a video only podcast, you can get away with a lot less editing because people are watching you too. And so like being visually having that visual stimulation to go along with the audio they're hearing helps with like people can say more and it doesn't bother them as much because they're focusing on watching the thing. Versus if they're driving down the car or driving down the road and all they're doing is listening, about the 3rd time someone goes, you're like, okay, what else can I listen to? I'm over this right now. That's good. I'm glad you're actually going through and on doing the edits for that.
it's very time consuming.
Oh, yeah.
It's really hard for me because I'm a video editor person. So to have the lack of visuals just makes it so much harder to pay attention to as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of the fight is finding a tool like Libsyn or Anchor just look into Anchor.fm. That is such a huge tool that helps with so many things. But it's just wrapping your head around the RSS feed and how all like the technical side of things work is probably the biggest thing. We do now, I actually edit our audio first and then apply it to the video, but we've been doing this for 2 years now. We've done 54 episodes. We've gotten a lot better at not talking over each other and trying to keep the lulls to a minimum. So some of that just takes practice as well.
All right, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Sirs, madam. Question is, what is the best minimum and maximum to have for people on a podcast, and how do you keep that content coherent and digestible? As you mentioned earlier, talking over each other, how do you avoid that?
Practice.
A lot of practice.
A lot of practice. At the very beginning, we started with 4 people and very quickly realized that like 4 people was too much for us. And we backed it down to 3 people. And then after like we did a lot of practice, we started getting to that point where like, hey, I think a 4th person makes a lot of sense for us again. So I think it's very personal. I mean, I've seen like, good Lord, they have like 7 people on Off Topic some weeks, right? And like it gets ridiculous, but especially if you're watching, it's not usually way too much. So I think it's about finding your own personal lines.
It depends how you react with those people as well. It depends on the people you have actually on the podcast itself.
Yeah,
how,
absolutely.
How you bounce off of each other. And if you can bounce off each other fast enough, then...
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think
More
that
people
learning to
can
kill the lulls is definitely
learning
like,
curve.
it's just finding that sweet spot for how many people. Because sometimes once you get used to each other and kind of how the whole thing goes, I mean, we've had episodes that accidentally went 2 hours long instead of 45 because we had a lot to say that week, right?
Yeah, for me, for my podcast, I figured 3 is the max number it could handle. Because I had an episode back in December where we had 4 people, and it was like garbage chaos. And because we had like 2 conversations happening at the same time, and if you're trying to have people listen, you don't want 2 conversations happening at the same time. But my podcast is usually me and then bringing on other people. So for them, it makes sense to have like a higher number. They could be able to handle that. Whereas mine, it's like I'm the only one who's used to doing what's happening.
Well, over Discord too, I'm sure that's got to be a lot harder because you don't have like facial animations to play off of a lot of the time either.
Actually, well, we do a video chat, but this episode was actually all 4 people in person on a couch.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so there's like 2 conversations going on, and I'm sitting in the middle. I'm just staring at the camera like, someone shoot me, please.
Yeah,
So,
I think the biggest thing is just feel it out because it can definitely change. I think we ebb and flow a lot as far as like what feels comfortable for people. And I think a lot of that was just, like I said, getting used to talking to each other, filling lulls, and like just feeling out how the whole podcast structure could go. Because we did, I think, maybe 2 podcasts at the very beginning with 4 people and went, this is way too much. We can't do this. And then the next 26 were probably 3, like hard limit, no more, no less. But we've grown back out of it again. So I think, yeah, just try it out, see how it feels, and figure out what works best for you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's
Perfect. Well, I think we're out of time. Yeah? Right? Beautiful.
Don't let me go.
Hold on.
Hey, real quick though.
Hello, stranger.
Yeah, Jake, Bottom Shelf Games. You guys talked about cheap audio solutions.
Yeah.
How a $20 microphone does perfectly well in the beginning. Can you talk about cheap video solutions? Because I think getting a video podcast off the ground is daunting because a camera is $500.
Logitech C920.
smartphones.
If you already have a
Smartphones.
smartphone, be careful, because I will say smartphones are incredibly useful, but if you don't have a way to pipe the audio directly into your phone, it uses a thing called flexible frame rate. And so when you try to pipe this into like Premiere Pro, it'll totally unsync whatever you've done. So be careful about that. But there is an HD camera in almost every smartphone that exists on the planet today.
good USB.
Or you could have your audio and your visual recorded on separate things and do a audio sync.
Yes, but
Yes.
you should absolutely do. The problem with doing that with a phone is that it doesn't have a hard 24 per second frame rate. It changes.
That's
and
what
so even if you
third-party
sync it
apps
up,
are for.
yeah.
Yeah. You could always find a good third-party app. I like to use a app called ProCam on the iPhone. You could find it in the Apple Store, and there's other great apps out there that will give you a lot of tools for your camera.
Another really great one, I know you're just about to say this, the Logitech.
Logitech C920
That
is
one.
a solid USB mic, USB
Webcam.
webcam.
Yeah, it's about $100, but I think Kind of Funny used
was-
one of
that
those
was
for
probably
like
like-
the first 2 years that they were doing the Game Over
I
Greggy
think
show.
Funhouse is still doing it, and it's what I use for mine.
Yeah, it's super solid. It's I think about $100 or so.
No, it's not even $100.
Is it down?
It's
No,
I
no.
bought mine for 65, and I believe it's down since then.
Awesome.
There you go.
Well, hey, thank you so much for everybody for coming. You guys were awesome.
Boom. Nailed it.
We'll be handing out outside if you want to talk or chat or anything.